Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Once again, as we welcome you, our listeners, our viewers, to the airwaves of Salam Media and to the special broadcast this evening. And we are obviously staying with the big stories and the big news. And we are fortunate to have and honored to have Dr. Sami Al-Arian, who is the director of the Center for Islam and Global Affairs and also Public Affairs professor at Istanbul Zain University. And let's welcome Dr. Sami onto screen right now. Dr. Sami, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome and Jazakallah khairan so much for your time.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. It's my pleasure to be with you.
Yes, Dr. Sami, a lot of us are actually trying to make sense of what is actually happening right across. And it appears as if things are actually changing by the day now. I know you've been very, very busy. You've been following these developments since the attacks began, on Iran by both the United States of America and also by Israel as well. And at this point in time, where we are, what is your reading of the situation after we've seen this last few weeks of intense bombing, carnage, death, destruction that has been taking place?
Well, as you and your listeners and viewers know, Israel has been, for the past 2+ years, on a genocidal mission, which is to wage a war of genocide against Gaza. And that war has had about over 70, 80,000 Palestinians being killed and decapitated. And it wants to become the hegemon in the region. To do that, it also launched an attack on Lebanon, on Syria. And the only one left, obviously, from the standpoint as it looks at the region and the so-called axis of resistance, was to make sure that it can strip Iran. It considers Iran as the head of this axis of resistance, and it's trying to wage a war against Iran. It tried that back last June 2025. But to have an effective campaign against Iran, it had to recruit the United States. Netanyahu had to convince Trump to join this suicidal mission. This mission, whether or not it is suicidal, we'll understand and know soon. But he recruited him in order to see if they can have a regime change in Iran. Israel has concluded, the Zionist regime has concluded that the only way it can be the hegemon in the region, uncontested, where it can dictate to every region, to every country in the region what it wants, what it needs, to be as expansionist and as uh, a source of instability or stability regarding its place in the region, is for the United States and the Zionist regime to bring the regime in Tehran down. And to do that, they started with a campaign of decapitation, meaning they target the most important figures, the most important leaders in the regime, starting from the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and of course, all the other leaders within the regime, whether they are military, political, or even within the scientific community vis-a-vis the nuclear program. They started that last June. Iran has been very reluctant to be drawn into a war, and it has been sending all kinds of signals that it's trying to avoid the war, but at the same time keep what it considers, excuse me, its rights, meaning to be a sovereign nation, meaning to enjoy its rights under international law and international treaties. It has signed the NPT treaty, which gives it certain rights vis-a-vis the nuclear program. Within the confines of an international law, it has every right to develop its defensive weapons, its defense program. It has the right to uh, support whoever it wants to support in terms of the different political actors. The Americans particularly the Trump administration, are trying to strip it of all these rights. So they sent ultimatums in terms of it has to basically strip itself of the knowledge of nuclear uh, uh, energy and in nuclear information. It has to stop enriching. They want a zero enrichment, which is against its rights because the NPT allows it certain amount of enrichment as long as it is under inspection and monitoring regime. They want to strip it of its rights to have ballistic defensive weapons, which is its only deterrent because it lacks the ability, since it's under tremendous sanctions, to buy an air force. When he say we devastated their air force, Iran does not have an air force. The only air force it can get actually was Russian, but the Russians have been very reluctant to sell it air fighters, and it does not have a navy. It does have a strong, relatively strong ground troops, an army, but that's only if it gets invaded. But if it gets bombed, it does not have any kind of defensive mechanism except to develop a missile program. And it has been doing that for decades. It has become actually one of the pioneering nations in the world vis-a-vis the missile technology and the drones technology. And the Americans and, of course, the Israelis are trying to strip it from that deterrent weapon. And, of course, Iran refused to do so. So they tried back in June. It didn't want to involve into an actual war. So it was sending basically signals. It was telling the Americans that it's going to hit them in these particular bases, that they have no defense against it. But what Iran was trying to do is to show that it's not interested in escalating the war. And it wants, but at the same time, it's not going to lay low and accept these kind of humiliating strikes. And after 12 days, it has demonstrated, particularly to the Israelis, that it is capable of reaching very strategic targets, that it is also going to bring pain and destruction upon its enemies. At that time, Netanyahu appealed to Trump to stop the war. And Trump went and asked the Iranians if they would like to take his offer of ceasefire. The Iranians agreed to that, even though there was an opposition within the Revolutionary Guards that they should continue for at least a week or two to show enough Iranian power so that they can be deterred. Nevertheless, that war stopped after 12 days. The lesson was not learned. They thought that they can try again by targeting, again, decapitating Iranian leadership, starting with the supreme leader, who was not targeted the first time back in June 2025, and hoping that they can actually stir the Iranian street. Netanyahu, through the Mossad chief, convinced Trump that this thing could take few days in which Israel will have its own agents in the street. They can stir the Iranian street, and they can not only decapitate the leaders, but they can also target the Revolutionary Guards, the besieged, those who can be in the streets defending the regime, the Iranian regime, from an American Zionist point of view, and that pretty quickly the regime will fall down. Of course, it was a pipe dream. It was not a serious proposal, and the events proved so, that this regime is very entrenched. Since that operation started on February 28th, that started with, again, killing not only the supreme leader, but also his wife and his children and grandchildren. They went after the whole family. His son, who became his successor, Mujtaba Khamenei, survived that. I don't know whether he was or wasn't in the house at the time. And he was chosen by the assembly of experts, those 88 people who are elected by the people, and they are charged with basically choosing the supreme leader when there is a vacancy, and also to monitor and evaluate him. So since that time, that plan, that pipe dream, that fantasy that Trump and Netanyahu had about regime change, about the collapse of the regime, about the breakup of the country, of course, didn't come to pass. It was, again, it was a fantasy that did not match the realities on the ground. In fact, the people came stronger for the government. Every night, they mount hundreds of thousands of people, and sometimes even millions of people to give their support to the government. Meanwhile, the people who are in charge of prosecuting the war have already chosen a strategy that is opposite the strategy of the Americans and the Israelis. The strategy of the Americans and the Israelis is called vertical escalation. And the idea is to mount as much firepower as possible in order to destroy as many of the institutions within the country as possible, and to kill as many of the leaders, whether in the political sphere or the military sphere, as well as those who are defending the Islamic Republic. And it's what's called sometimes shock and awe. This is a strategy that they used before in Afghanistan, in Iraq. And the purpose of that is to scare the other side so that they can capitulate and surrender. What they, of course, did not realize, and this is a different system. This is not a system that could easily be coded in the way that the Saddam regime, which really revolved around him. This is a very entrenched system. It's a revolutionary system, state that has existed for 47 years. They built institutions. They have millions of people as their supporters who are willing to die and defend the country. To make the long story short, what we had here is a counter strategy, because this is an asymmetric war in which Iran uses what's called the horizontal escalation, meaning the moment it was bombed by these Air Force and bombers and fighter planes and so on and so forth, it started hitting multiple countries in the region. Whenever you have an American base, military base, whether it's logistical base or a base that hosts air fighters, airplanes, bombers, or a naval, whatever it is, it was targeted. They were able to take down almost all the radars, so that when the United States tried to shoot down these missiles, they no longer have the window available to them to shoot them down, because they can't see them once these radars have been taken out. It was able basically to take down these military bases and make them dysfunctional. They can't use them anymore. They have been abandoned for the most part. The United States has two aircraft carriers, Gerald Ford and Abraham Lincoln. Gerald Ford left the region pretty quickly. It needs lots of repairs. And Abraham Lincoln, which is one of the most devastating aircraft carriers, the most most modern among the different aircraft carriers, had to go and actually be off the coast of India, because it feared that it could be targeted, and there is no defense for that. After the Iranians were able to hit multiple, and of course, it's unfortunate that many of these military bases are in Arab countries, which are in good relations, or were in good relations, or at one point were in good relations with Iran. They also had to suffer from this. The Iranians did not distinguish between the system and where the air bases are, because if you have military bases where you have all these different bombers coming from these different strikes coming from, it had to from their standpoint, they had to mount a defense. They have to target them and strike them. So in the past 26, 27 days or so, we have witnessed that Iran very methodically was able to not only deplete the interceptors, those missiles, because the United States and Israel have multiple systems of interceptors: the THAAD, the Arrow, the Patriot, the Arrow, the David Sling, the Iron Dome. All these have finite number of interceptors, and it was able to shoot. They were able to shoot some of the Iranian, sometimes many of the Iranian missiles, particularly the old technology. And once they became depleted, Iran started using its newer models, newer missiles, and they have been able to devastate much of Israel, because Israel is a tiny state. When you look at the area of Israel, excluding the West Bank, it's 22,000 square kilometers, while Iran is 1.65 million kilometers square. So it's a vast country, and it has a lot of mountains. Most of these missiles and the production factories and facilities are probably underground beneath these mountains. Now, what we have on top of this is that Iran is placed in a very strategic position. 20% of the world's economy, of the world's global oil production, and which is the main source for the global economy, as well as the natural gas, pass through this narrow strait called the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is pretty much controlled by Iran. It can single-handedly allow or disallow any tanker or any ship from going in or out. It is a very narrow strait, and it's very easily controlled, and it could be hit, it could be struck, it could be targeted. They can lay landmines in the strait, and they pretty much shut it down. They gave certain instructions. Those who are not hostile to Iran, like Chinese tankers, Russian tankers, they can pass. Those who break relations with Israel, like Spain did, or at least they withdrew, I think, the ambassador. If they do that, they can given be permission. Those who are willing to pay fees to pass through, and they put that fees at $2 million per tanker, they will be allowed in and out, like Japanese. Japan agreed to that, Pakistan agreed to that. So they put certain rules which determines that they are in charge of the Strait of Hormuz, uncontested. Meanwhile, Trump is blustering. He made noises about that he's going to escort tankers. He couldn't do that. He's going to bring the United States Navy to do that and force the use of the Strait of Hormuz. He was unable to do that because he was advised by his military that this is not a mission that could be successful. Actually, they could take a beating. Meanwhile, Trump is trying to get an off-ramp. He's trying to find an exit. He's trying to see how he can get himself out of this hole that he dug himself into, even though he's saying something completely different to the public through his rants and through his posts on social media. He's trying to tell people that there's no more military targets, and then he goes and said, I'm going to hit you as hard as I can. He keeps telling them there is no Navy, there is no Air Force, and therefore we have accomplished there are no more military targets, and yet he keeps threatening, and he keeps not only threatening, but telling people that come and join me. You know, he asked the NATO to come and join, and then he blasting them because not a single country agreed to join him in this endeavor, trying to force the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. So, in conclusion, just to look at the situation, he has been trying to find a way to negotiate, but keep his conditions, which are completely unacceptable to Iran. These are three things that he's trying to get on the nuclear issue: no enrichment, that they will have some sort of constraints on their missile system, and that they will stop supporting the other members of the axis of resistance. That's unacceptable, and he's been, saying, putting ultimatum: if they don't do that, I'm gonna shoot, bomb them more. I'm going to devastate them more. And on the other hand, the Iranians, they excuse me, they put conditions on the future of the region. They are no longer going to accept the presence and existence of military bases, which are basically threats to their own national security. So they are said it's probably a maximalist condition, that they want all Americans out. They want reparations. They want a guarantee of how this is not going to come again their way, because obviously when they accepted the ceasefire back in June, it came back again to them 8 months later, and they're not going to wait every 8 months to have a war waged by the United States and the Zionist regime. They need some kind of a guarantee. And they also want to stop the whole region, Israel, from all the different wars that it has started in the region. Because when this started, we saw also that in Lebanon, that front also became very hot, very active. And we saw a different Hezbollah that has been giving all kinds of problems for the Israelis. Yesterday, they hit like 20 tanks and different carriers. And therefore, they are giving really Israel a handful of resistance, and they're able to send missiles and drones deep into Israel, both in the northern front as well as in Haifa and Tel Aviv. As the Iranians, today they have concluded something like 82 different waves of missiles, and now the Israelis have less ability to actually knock them down. They have less ability to intercept them. Most of these sophisticated missiles have been landing and causing lots of destruction within the areas where the Israelis thought that they are safe. Most of the time, most Israelis, millions of them, are in shelters, unable to do anything. The whole country has been paralyzed. No, no schools, no education, no universities, no work, nothing. So that's going to be very painful. So over the long term, then we're dealing with two situations where they are bombarding Iran day and night, where Iran has lost thousands of people. It has, they said they have targeted 15,000 different targets, so there will be a lot of destruction. So it's a matter of who will the threshold of pain, who would be more tolerant of the pain that's being inflicted, in addition to the economic pain. Now the barrel of oil is reached over $100, $113, $115. That is unsustainable, because Trump, who is also facing the midterm elections, obviously the war is not popular in the United States. There's a lot of opposition, both political and popular, and there is going to be more economic pain as this drags on. So whether or not we're going to see the end of this war is going to depend on who is going to actually concede the different conditions being put on each party first.
Well, certainly, but also, Professor Sami, this attack on Iran is it's a massive game changer. Compared to previous attacks in the Middle East, or whether even we're talking about Afghanistan, where the United States of America was able to assemble coalitions to join the United States, whether it was in Iraq, Afghanistan, even when Muammar Gaddafi was taken out as well. But just looking at it from the United States perspective in terms of Donald Trump, how delusional has Donald Trump been to act on the insistence of Benjamin Netanyahu? Because it is clear that he has been severely embarrassed. Iran is not what Iraq was or Afghanistan was as well. And I've seen an interesting comment even from the new supreme leader, where he mentioned, where Mujtaba Khamenei mentioned, he called the US president a fool, a complete fool. And he says he's not even fit to serve as a low-level attendant in Iran.
This is the first time, the very first time, excluding what happened last June, because it was very brief. But this is the first time where the United States joins the Zionist regime in a direct attack. In the past, the Zionist regime would be waging wars, and the United States would be helping them, funding them, giving them weapons, sheltering them, protecting them politically at the United Nations, but not being involved directly in military actions. Actually, when they were accused of that, they will always deny it. So this is the first time where they're actually engaged and leading the effort to have a military and strikes and war against Iran and a country in the region, which is a first, and that is going to have consequences. I mean, this is not going to be an easy cakewalk as they think. Netanyahu sold Trump a bill of goods. Whether he did that convincingly or did that through extortion, who knows? But the fact of the matter is this is going to escalate. Now they are thinking of bringing ground troops because certainly they cannot achieve their objectives from the air. I think they concluded that. They can bomb Iran and continue to bomb Iran. Whether Iran would surrender and capitulate is very doubtful. They were in an 8-year war with Iraq, and they never once they contemplated surrendering. Iran is a very proud nation. Iran is a powerful nation. They have a leadership that is revolutionary. They understand wars. They understand martyrdom. They understand sovereignty. They understand dignity. They understand honor. They understand what it means to be an independent. They understand if they capitulate, there is no meaning left for that revolution. And therefore, this is not even on the table. The sooner the United States realizes this, the sooner they're going to come down from that tree. But again, it is the Israelis who have been calling the shots so far. I think eventually the United States, if he is foolish enough to actually send ground troops into Iran, I think they will be massacred. I mean, let's look at what happened in the past. When they wanted to kick Saddam out of Kuwait, they had to assemble 700,000 people through 5 months of mobilization, in which the United States contributed about 500,000 people. If you look at what happened in 2003, again against Iraq, they had to bring about at least 200,000 people, if not more. And this was Iraq, which was much weaker than Iran now. It's about 1/3 of the size. It had 25 million people at the time. Today, Iran is 93 million people. It does not have the rugged terrain. It does not have the system. Iran has the system where Iraq didn't have the system, where you can actually mobilize million people who would come and willingly fight and die for the system, for their state, for their country, for the Islamic Republic. Iraq didn't have that. So he's delusional, of course, to think that by simply bombing from the air, there is, I read this the other day, someone actually put down 40 different campaigns since World War II, in which someone tried to win a war through an air campaign. And the record is 0 to 40. Not a single one actually was successful. And therefore, if he doesn't bring ground troops, then he cannot be successful. But if he brings ground troops with only a few thousand people, maybe they can get an island or two at one point. But this is going to be, again, a war of attrition. It's going to have difficulty with logistics. It's going to have difficulty with trying to sustain this effort. So this could be another Vietnam. Vietnam started with few thousands, and then it ended up bringing hundreds of thousands of people, and then they had to withdraw in in humility. Same in Afghanistan. And if they do that in Iran, the Iranians are going to fight to the last person. And therefore, it is doubtful that the United States will carry the day. So we're back to where we are today. And the more he gets involved, the more he gets into this fight, the harder it would be to leave. They started the war, but they can't end it.
Yes, but also, Professor Sami, let's just look at it from a global political landscape and the global political dynamics that are playing out and the position that the United States hold as a superpower or the superpower in the world. And what has this attack on Iran actually meant for the United States in terms of how it is now being seen globally? Because we know that he's been changing his tune, he's been calling on the likes of NATO and the European countries, some of the Western countries as well, to get involved. They've refused. We've seen Spain was a blank, totally a refusal as well. And then on the other side, you've got countries like Russia, you've got China, also, watching carefully what is actually playing out. We see the Middle East region now at this point in time losing confidence in the ability of the United States of America to protect them because their bases have been hit, and after they spent billions and trillions of dollars for protection fees or protection money. So all of this obviously playing out is going to have global consequences from a political perspective, and also how the United States is going to be seen in the future.
Indeed. I mean, let's look first at the allies, the Arab allies of the United States. The United States has over 60 bases in the region. A lot of them have been made out of business. They have been hit hard, struck hard. Most of the radars have been taken out. They have been, for the most part, abandoned by the Americans. The Americans couldn't actually protect their allies. This is very important to note. And when they had a choice whether they're going to use their interceptors for their Arab allies or for Israel, they chose Israel. When they brought in some of these interceptors from the Far East, from Korea and other places, they sent them to Israel, not to protect their Arab allies. So the first consequence is that America is not reliable. It does not actually protect its allies, its local allies, where they have military bases. So what's the use of military base to protect Israel? I don't think these regimes brought the United States so that it can protect Israel, and it cannot protect them. Then that's a failure. So that's not going to be a positive thing for America's relationship in this region. Secondly, globally, if Iran is able to stand the American and Israeli pressure and win this war of attrition, in which the Americans at the end will not be able, because when you look at the different objectives, war objectives, you'll find that it's much easier for Iran to win in this situation because all Iran has to do is to survive. If it can survive and insist on its rights, then the American campaign was defeated. And if the American campaign is defeated, that's going to have a major consequence on the world. The world would see that America is no longer able, short of the use of nuclear bombs, to defeat a local or defeat a regime or defeat a state which is ideological, which is also fighting back heroically. These are going to have monumental consequences. And the reverse is true. If America is able to defeat Iran, then Israel becomes the hegemon in the region. And then it can dictate to every region, to every country in the region, what it wants from it, both at the GCC level as well as other countries, including Syria and Egypt and Turkey and others and others. And that cannot be a good thing for the region. And therefore, I think Iran will fight to the bitter end. It will succeed and survive. It will able to defend everything coming its way from the Americans. It will inflict a very painful campaign, both at the military level against Israel and the US presence in the region, as well as an economic pain that's going to impact the whole world and possibly even collapse the global economy. Now, this could actually be escalating much further, and that's what Netanyahu wants. If Trump decides to go after the energy sector in Iran against the oil production facilities, refineries, and so on and so forth, against their power grids and electricity, and if he does that, of course, that's going to be have a lot of impact on Iran for many years to come. But Iran has the capability of retaliating back. And it said, openly that it's going to make the whole region dark, including Israel and all American allies, in which this is going to be an absolute disaster for the whole world. We're talking about also American companies that invested hundreds of billions of dollars in the production facilities of oil in this region, which is producing more than 20% of the global production. So this could be the nightmare scenario, but I can't see how America would be winning that way. That would be another sign of America's weakness and America's the collapse of its empire. So, however way you see it, if the Iranians continue on that path, the path of resistance, the path of defiance, the path of determined will and resolve to continue defending their rights and their sovereignty and their independence, and it's America and its Zionist ally that will back down eventually, then this could actually be a new era by which the international order would be appended. We'll have a new one in which not only we have a multipolar international order, but I think we're going to see also the ascendance of middle powers, as well as this policy will impact many regions, not just this region.
Yes, and I think, when we talk about multiple and we talk about a new world order, there again, we're talking of another game changer. And just finally, Professor Sami, we know when one looks at the global south and when one looks at the relationship between Iran and the global south, I mean, they've got a bit, good relationship. If you look at South Africa, for example, as well, Iran part of BRICS as well. So, many of the countries in the global south are obviously watching what is happening. And also, one latest development that's just come through today, and I was basically told to ask you this question, is the G7 summit that is coming up. And we've just learned that France has actually rescinded South Africa's summit invitation as a result of these geopolitical tensions. But I think also some of the reading into this is because of South Africa and how Washington sees South Africa in terms of its ties and its foreign policy towards South Africa. And I assume, America will adopt the same attitude with many other countries that have a good relationship with Iran.
Absolutely. I mean, the United States has been targeting South Africa since it filed its application to declare Israel's war as a genocide. And they have been trying to pressure South Africa to rescind this, to reverse course. And of course, South Africa refused to do so. And therefore, they're trying to exact a price from South Africa because of this position. And I think that's probably for the better, because the Trump administration has been different from other administrations. It's pretty open about where its priorities are. And it's very plain and very open, and it's not and it's in public where they go after these, because they use hard power, they use all kinds of threats, open threats, to make people change and states change their policies. And I think South Africa is better off with BRICS. I think we need to see the expansion of BRICS. We need to see more trade and more relationship with the global south. I think China and Russia need to step up to the plate. South Africa is among the original states of BRICS. That's what the S stands for. And South Africa can actually play a very constructive role in trying to get as many peoples. Now we have almost 35% or more of the global trade is within the BRICS community. We need to bring them down, and we need to expose the imperialist and the capitalist world that is trying to take people to a different era than what the world needs to go after. Trump and his administration do not care about international law, do not care about any of the conventions that people have agreed to since World War II. whether it's on human rights, whether it's the rule of law, whether it's international criminal court, whatever it is. They're trying to bring people even fair trade. All what he is interested in is to become the king of the world and trying to bring everybody to the dictate and the will of the United States. That cannot be sustained, but it needs leadership. And I think the BRICS, of course, you have a problem. You have a very weak situation with India. You have Brazil, you have Russia, you have China, you have South Africa, but India is actually going through the other camp, and that weakens BRICS. But I think South Africa, because it is the country that could truly represent the global South and truly represent the rest of the world, that can play a constructive role, and forget about trying to please America. You will never please America. You'll never please the West unless you are willing to lose your sovereignty, your independence, unless you agree to their dictation, unless you become a stooge, you become a client state, a vassal state. That's what this is about. This Epstein class that now has been pretty much exposed, you could see how they're trying to manipulate the world and manipulate the economy and the politics and the power structure in the world. I think it's time for us to walk away from this system and rebuild a new system. And if Iran actually comes on top of this struggle, that will completely strengthen the argument that we have to go into a new direction. And that new direction economically could be led by BRICS, and politically could be done through a new system, a new regional order in the region, in West Asia, in North Africa, in the Middle East, as well as globally, but with the cooperation of Russia and China.
Well, Professor Sami, I must say it's been an absolute pleasure as always, having you with us. And we certainly do appreciate you taking time out for us at Salam Media this evening. And we wish you all the best, inshallah. And looking forward to future engagements as well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum.
Professor Sami Al-Arian, academic, joining us this evening right here on Salam Media on a special broadcast. And with that, I'm taking leave of you until we meet again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.